Hi everyone, I hope you're doing well. I am having issues with my Wi-Fi, so I'm going to record the instructions for our activity today, and that way you can follow along in case something goes wrong with our Zoom classroom. So just so you see the homework for Friday's class, I've added a mid-semester check-in, just a small little survey for you to fill out. It shouldn't take very long. It just looks like this. A few little questions for you to answer regarding how the class is going, what you're enjoying, and any suggestions you'd like to make for the class moving forward. So that shouldn't take too much of your time. You're also welcome to continue reading The Woman Warrior. You can catch up if you've fallen behind at all or get ahead on the reading. You don't have to worry about this piece, the in-class collaborative close reading part 2. I will explain that all. So today we're going to be doing an activity called Collaborative Close Reading. The link for the assignment and the activity is here in the syllabus in case our Zoom call doesn't work out well. Just know that all of the instructions and everything you need are there in the syllabus. So let's scroll to the top and talk about what we'll be doing today. Actually, one thing I want to show you first. There is one tool, one library database that we're going to be using for this activity, and it's called the Oxford English Dictionary. So you'll want at least one person in your group to have access to the Oxford English Dictionary, and the way that you access it is through My Red Dragon. So you should assign one person in the group who's going to be in charge of doing this, and to access the OED, you're going to need to go to the Library tab of My Red Dragon, and then click over here where it says Databases, and then you're going to click the letter O, because what we're looking for is the database called Oxford English Dictionary. This is a really fancy and expensive dictionary that Cortland pays a lot of money for you all to use, and so we're going to take advantage of that. This is also something that you'll be asked to use in future English classes, and the good thing about the Oxford English Dictionary is that it allows us to think about the etymology of different words, so how the meaning of words has changed over time. And it turns out that looking at the etymology of key words and key phrases from whatever poem, book, memoir, novel that we're reading, we can often gain really interesting new perspectives on the text. So we're going to be looking up the definitions and the histories of words. So that is known as the etymology. So what's going to pop up once you click the Oxford English Dictionary, you're going to get to this. You'll have access through the Cortland Libraries. And what we're going to be doing today is annotating various passages, and you're going to be looking for key terms that seem really important, and you're going to be popping them into the OED, Oxford English Dictionary, to see if you can learn anything interesting about the history of these words. So for instance, maybe you're reading a passage that keeps mentioning ghosts over and over again. You say, okay, ghosts are really important to this text that we're reading. What have ghosts meant over time? What is the significance of this term? And so here we see the first entry is for ghost noun. So we're going to go take a look at that. And so what you'll see here at the top is the etymology. You can expand that. So you can read a little bit about the history of this word. Where did this word come from? So here we have, the word is known only in the West Germanic languages. It appears to have pre-Germanic formation. You can learn, it comes from Old English. And you can read a bit about what the word has meant over time. And then the way that the OED is organized, and I'll walk you through this quickly, is that there are different definitions. So here you have the first definition, ghost meaning soul or spirit, the principle of life. You also have this kind of older definition. It used to mean to breathe one's last breath and to expire and to die. And then below, you have examples organized chronologically of different texts throughout history where we see the word ghost being used in these different senses of the term. So you can see people using it in 1816 and 1879. You have another definition here. Ghost is the conventional equivalent for the Latin word spiritus, so thinking about ghost as a kind of spirit, but also the term ghost apparently used to have an association with the word breath. So we might think about ghosts and breath. What role does breath and breathing and spirits play in the woman warrior? So just read through a few definitions. See if you can find anything interesting. A good spirit, an angel. and see if it might reveal something unexpected that you hadn't noticed in the text. The OED, it's kind of hit or miss. So maybe you'll look up a definition of a word and you'll say, okay, that word kind of means what I think it's meant. Its meaning hasn't really changed over time. It doesn't reveal anything about the text. But occasionally you'll hit on something really fascinating that'll allow you to see the text that we're reading in a new way and might help you build to a new interpretation of what we're reading. So this is the OED that we'll be using. I want to switch back to going over the assignment for today, the activity. So here you have the description. So this is going to be to practice close reading, that skill that we've been talking about since day one of class. Just to review, close reading is the process of observing the details of a text, how it is constructed, to produce certain effects on the reader, viewer, or audience. These smaller details then become the evidence for an interpretation. And so what we're going to be doing today is part one of this activity, and I'll explain part two on Friday. So in this activity, this is the overview, you will practice the skill of annotation by annotating 3 paragraphs from the assigned reading using Google Docs. During round 1, your group will spend roughly 10 minutes annotating the first passage assigned to you in column 1. When it's time to move on to the second round, you will move on from your first assigned passage to your second, column 2, and begin the annotation process again. When you move on to the next passage, you will inherit the annotations of the previous group and you will make additional annotations. So the chart that I'm referring to is down here. And these, so you'll see your group numbers, those breakout groups, your small groups 1 through 6. For round 1, you're going to be annotating the passage in this Google Doc. You'll see it should open up a document. Let's see if that worked. Yep, and so you'll just be highlighting, annotating, taking notes. If there's a particular word, a piece of punctuation that you think is interesting, you're going to highlight it and leave a comment in the margins. So you'll be working on this first passage for 10 minutes. And then as we move into round 2, okay, so say I'm in group 1, the next passage that I have to annotate is passage 6. So I'm going to go down here and I'm going to open this Google Doc. And the thing to note is that when you open that Google Doc, it's already going to have some annotations once we're in round 2 because group 6 will have already been working on it. So over the course of our class, you're going to be working in your small groups and you're going to be annotating a total of 3 different passages. So we'll have round 1, these are the passages you'll work on. Round 2, you go find the number over here. And then round 3, this is your assigned passage to be working on. There should never be 2 groups working on the same passage. So hopefully that makes sense. And I can answer any questions at the beginning of class on Wednesday. So for the setup, we're going to try to do breakout rooms. Hopefully the Wi-Fi is strong enough. And you will be working in your small groups. You should all have out close reading handout number 1. You might even want to print it out so you can have this up in front of you. This is just a reminder of the different things that you should be looking for as you're annotating all of the readings for class. So as you're reading The Woman Warrior, as you're reading A Raisin in the Sun, we went over this. These are the different elements that you might want to be looking for as you read. So you're all going to want to have out the close reading handout, and then at least one person will need the OED to go look up those definitions and etymologies. So here's the instructions kind of on a step-by-step breakdown. Number 1, as a group, read your paragraph aloud at least 3 times with a different student reading each time. And the reason I ask you to do that is because it's going to sound a little bit different in every person's voice. You're going to notice something when one person reads versus when another person reads based on the ways that they pronounce and the ways that they read the words on the page. I would also encourage you to read slowly and carefully and dramatically. Pay attention to any pieces of punctuation, right? We know that a comma indicates a shorter, smaller pause than a period. If you see a colon or a semicolon, right, try to honor those in the ways that you read. And then after 3 people have read your passage aloud, we'll move on to number 2. You're going to annotate your paragraph using the close reading handout. What aspects of the author's language stand out to you? What details do you notice? No observation is too small. So this is supposed to be really fun. What you're going to end up doing is highlighting different words and phrases and using this add comment function in the Google Doc to notice different things that stand out to you, that seem important. And so you'll see here a little bit more, some specifics on that. So 2A says, make your annotations as specific as possible. If you identify a moment of humor, try to add a few thoughts on what makes that moment funny. If you identify a moment of irony, talk a little bit more in your comment about why that's ironic. Same goes for simile, right? I don't just want you identifying, oh, here's a simile. Well, what two things are being compared and why is that an interesting or an important comparison? How does it prompt us to think differently about what we're reading? So remember that your goal is simply to notice and observe as many things as possible. This is collaborative close reading. We're trying to work together to generate as many observations and annotations as possible. These texts, let me show you, I'll scroll down a bit. So if we were doing it in person, we'd be passing these passages from the reading around the room, and I would give you colored highlighters and you'd all be taking notes on them, so they'd end up looking something like this. But because we're doing it online in Google Docs, it's going to end up looking something like this, right? So by the time we're done, each of the passages will have all kinds of highlights and annotations and notes in the margins. You'll remember that we did this the first week of class when we listened to the TED Talk, The Danger of a Single Story. Chimamanda Adichie, we each kind of annotated, and then we collectively talked about the different annotations that we made. So you don't have to have some kind of profound interpretation. You're just trying to generate as many observations, trying to really notice what Kingston is doing with language, with punctuation, with spaces on the page, the different kinds of stories she's telling, the metaphors, the figurative language that she's using, her tone, all of the things that are on that close reading handout. Those are what we're looking for and paying attention to and listening for. If your passage is very serious, if it's very dark, if it's funny, if it's sad, if it's all of those different things at once, those are super important to take note of in your annotations. And then for the third step, highlight any words that you don't know the exact definition of or that seem like they're really important. Use the Oxford English Dictionary to look up the definitions of at least 2 of those words that seem really important to you. So for each word, record its definition and its etymology in a comment on the paragraph. You might think about what other words is it related to? Do the words that you look at, do they give you any insights into the passage or the text as a whole? So you're going to have 10 minutes. You're going to go through all of these steps, reading, annotating, looking up definitions. You're going to go through this with your first passage, and then after 10 minutes, you'll move on to your second passage. And then after another 10 minutes, you'll move on to your third passage. And that's what it says down here at the bottom. So note, assuming that the Zoom call works, assuming that breakout rooms work, you can return to the main room to ask questions at any time. And just make sure that you have some kind of like text thread, some kind of group me, WhatsApp, some thread conversation going on with the other people in your group so that, I don't know, if something happens and you need to kind of help each other out, you're able to converse even without the breakout rooms. You'll notice, so these are the times for section 1. Those of you who are in section 2, you have a different copy of this document, so your times will align with the times of our class period. But for those of you in section 1, you'll see we have from 10:40 to 10:50 to work on that first passage. Then you will close out of passage 1, and everyone in your group will open passage 2, or whichever passage you're assigned here. And then for the last 10 minutes of class, you will be annotating the passage assigned to you in this column. And again, this is what the document should end up looking like. So hopefully that wasn't too confusing. My hope is that this is going to be a fun activity for us to read together, to really spend time listening to Kingston's words and sounds and thinking deeply about the choices that she's making as an author and what effects those choices have on us as readers and as viewers and as audience members for her text. So that is all for now. Please come prepared to class with any questions. I'll be happy to answer those, and then we will dive into our collaborative annotation.